The state health plan moves a critical step towards reform. The Senate will tackle relaxing concealed carry gun laws for restaurants and public parks. And the debate over a Mexican government-issued ID card. Next.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.
Hi there, I'm Kelly McCullen. Thanks so much for watching this week. The House fast-tracked legislation reforming the state health plan earlier this week. There is bipartisan agreement that the health plan is losing money and facing billions of dollars in future health care liabilities. But making state employees and state retirees pay into the plan is a partisan discussion we follow this week. The House passed that Senate bill this week reforming the state health plan for teachers and state employees. The debate centered on requiring state workers to pay a monthly health insurance premium while creating an optional premium for state retirees. Supporters say making employees pay about 5% of their monthly premium is a step towards making the state health plan more solvent. It also reflects the economic situation in North Carolina.
I don't know how we can completely isolate our state employees from an economic situation that's affecting everybody in our state. I mean, are we asking people who aren't employed by our state to suffer all of the consequences of the economic meltdown and somehow or other insulate these people, although they're fine people?
State employees would pay either $11 or $22 per month after choosing from two tiers of health insurance coverage. Retirees could receive free health insurance or pay $22 per month for a higher insurance tier. Democrats say there are other options out there for funding the state health plan, like cigarette tax increases, without making state workers pay part of their premium.
I think it's a slap in the face of our state employees and a slap in the face of our teachers when we have to take back what we have already promised them.
And we're going to make them absorb that on top of not giving them any additional salary this year. And there will likely be layoffs, at least that's what I've been hearing in the press from Republican leadership.
The House defeated an effort that would have eliminated the worker premium portion of the reform bill. GOP leaders say keeping out-of-pocket costs at $0 could lead to state layoffs.
It would be about 1,400 state jobs this year and about 2,800 jobs next year.
The Senate is holding this bill right now. It will give it a final review before a vote that could send it to Governor Perdue or request negotiations with the House. Two of the Senate's member medical doctors have their eyes on hospital infections. They really want to know how prevalent these infections are statewide. Their bill would create an official infection surveillance system. Hospitals would report local data to the state, who would compile that information and release data when it's in the public interest.
My impression is that we do a pretty good job, but we have no numbers to prove it. And this will tell us whether or not we're doing a good job or our impression is wrong. We need to go back and figure out how we should do things better. Now, we already know by the Institutes of Medicine that there are a lot of problems with patient safety. And so, again, this is the opportunity for medicine to look at itself in the mirror and say, can we do better?
Hospital infection tracking would begin by this coming New Year's Eve. This bill has passed the Senate. It sits in the House, but we'll pick it up later. The Senate has also approved lifting the permit requirement for people buying crossbows. Current state gun laws treat crossbows like pistols instead of shotguns, which don't require any permit. Senator Buck Newton says crossbows are primarily hunting weapons and you can buy them permit-free in South Carolina as it is. The North Carolina Wildlife Commission supports the legislation. It opened up crossbow hunting just a few years ago.
I'm not exactly sure why they fell into this category of requiring a permit like a pistol. I mean, they are dangerous to what they're pointed at.
Law enforcement lobbyists told a Senate committee they see no problem with allowing permit-free sales of crossbows. Lawmakers pushing gun rights bills earned a House victory this week. The House passed a bill allowing concealed carry permit holders to take their firearms into restaurants serving alcohol and public parks. There is some fine print that comes with the law's relaxation that allows areas to remain gun-free, but that's a concession that did not lessen the debate. The House took 2 days in debating, then passing a bill to allow concealed carry permit holders to bring their firearms in bars, restaurants, and on public park grounds.
North Carolina permit holders, it's been a 16-year track record of proving themselves safe, sober, and law-abiding.
The House bill will give local governments an option to declare concealed carry-free zones in park areas where children play or recreational activities are held. The permit holder would lock his or her gun in their vehicle. But some lawmakers believe too many arguments begin on the playfield to allow any guns at all.
An innocent bystander, and that's what gets my attention, is the person that's intended to be harmed. It's always my grandchild, your grandchild, somebody in the community. And I think therein lies the problem when we allow handguns to be, especially in areas where you're going to have sporting events.
I have gone to sporting events and I have seen parents get angry. I've seen some that probably lost their cool to the extent that they were totally embarrassed. But I don't think I ever saw one that would go to the extremes of taking a deadly weapon and using it.
Restaurant owners could declare their businesses concealed carry free and the law would back them. Servers would not be required to ask any customer ordering an alcoholic drink if they're carrying a firearm. Concealed carry permit holders cannot order booze if they're carrying their weapons, against the law. In spite of the argument that concealed carry permit holders are among North Carolina's safest firearm owners, opponents say ball fields and businesses serving alcohol are no places for guns. Mark Binker with the News and Record here to talk about handguns in restaurants, public parks. Let's get right to the base element of all the rhetoric we've heard and the tweets we have seen. Is this back to the old anti-gun rights versus pro-gun rights debate?
A little bit. I mean, basically this conversation, the two sides of this conversation are folks who believe that those with concealed carry permits, those who have gone through training and acted responsibly, should be able to have those weapons in more places and at more times, and those who think that the current restrictions serve a purpose and keep us safer that way. And you know, it's really hard to divine who may be right and who may be wrong. There's not a lot of data out there. There's some good anecdotes, but not a lot of hard numbers where you say, oh yeah, the percentages are better this way or that. So,
would the percentage and statistics change anyone's mind in this debate? I mean, from the
probably.
time this bill was filed?
Probably not. I mean, for the folks who want to expand gun rights, it's sort of an article of faith that more responsible citizens with more guns is a good thing. And for the people who are against the bill, or at least against certain portions of the bill, they will say, you know, there's a reason we have control laws, and those control laws help keep us safe. So you're not going to bring them together for one big kumbaya moment over this.
This bill has to clear the Senate, has to get Governor Perdue's signature, of course, as part of the process. But if it becomes law, how fundamental will this change the prevalence of guns at our local restaurant or in our parks?
It's not going to be huge. The difference on the restaurant side is right now you go into the K&W, they don't serve alcohol, so you could have somebody in there with a concealed carry weapon right now. But if you go into, say, the local Applebee's, which does have a bar, that person can't legally conceal carry into the Applebee's. So the change would be for restaurants, oh, you can go into your local place that serves alcohol, and as long as you don't order a drink, you're still allowed to carry. For parks, it's going to be a little bit, at least under the current version, a little bit hit and miss, depending. State parks, pretty much you'll be able to carry in. City and county governments can still say, listen, we have a playground here, we have a little league field, and we're not comfortable allowing you to carry into those type of parks, so we're still going to keep concealed carry holders from carrying into those parks, and what they'll have to do is lock the firearms in their cars rather than bring them in.
Yeah, we're not going to handicap the chances of this bill over in the Senate side, or at least not too much, but what would be the sentiment of the GOP majority in the Senate as they receive this bill?
In general, the Republican majorities in the House and Senate are sympathetic to expansion of gun rights, to the expansion of personal rights of responsible citizens. So I think it's not too much of a stretch to say this bill is going to pass in some way, shape, or form. The details may change around the edges, but sort of the fundamental that we're going to allow citizens with concealed carry permits to conceal carry in more places, that sentiment's going to carry through to the end.
All right, Mark Binker with the Greensboro News and Record. You can find him online, better yet, buy a newspaper. Thanks for being on the show, Mark.
Thank you.
A House Judiciary Committee will consider a bill making English the official language of North Carolina. The legislation reads that English is the common language of the people of the United States. This bill would amend the state constitution if voters approve. That vote could come in November 2012 on Election Day. Some House Republican lawmakers say the Mexican consulate's office in North Carolina will issue an ID card to illegal immigrants without proper identity checks. The House passed a bill this week that would make that card unusable if someone tries to conduct state or local government business with it. The House voted this week to forbid the state government and local governments from accepting an ID card issued by the Mexican consulate for government business purposes. Supporters of cracking down on what's called a matricular consular card says these IDs are illegitimate and that the Mexican government is trying to legitimize illegal immigrants by issuing them.
So any legal immigrant, temporary worker, or vacation traveler is required to carry either a document issued by the U.S. government or a passport issued by your own government.
House Democrats say the bill sponsors never sought comprehensive feedback on whether matricular consular cards pose any problem in North Carolina. They say law enforcement testimony was silent during the committee process.
I think we ought to be looking to our state agencies and our law enforcement agencies to tell us when they have a problem that needs to be addressed. That has not happened here.
The Democrats also argue the Mexican government told House members their consulate cards carry encryption and other measures to prevent counterfeiting. But the Republicans say the integrity of the physical card is not the issue. They say the issue is the insecure method of how people officially obtain the card from the consulate.
I don't know what kind of encryption goes in, but if I remember right, the reason they aren't reliable is that there's no way of knowing that the person they're being issued to is the person that person's claiming to be.
Democratic Representative Rick Glazier cited the heated rhetoric behind House Bill 33 as a reason the House should have defeated it.
And so whether it is on the merits or for the honor of our colleagues or for the people involved or for the preservation of the institution, I hope that we change, some of us, our vote today, and that we vote to defeat this bill. It is an ugly, ugly bill.
The 66-50 vote moves this bill to the state Senate. House Bill 33 contains a list of acceptable identifications the North Carolina government and local governments could accept. The Senate will weigh a House-passed bill preventing government-owned telecommunications companies from undercutting private competitors. The bill would let cities establish cable TV or internet companies if those companies operate like a private business. That means rates could not be subsidized, and the municipal company would have to give money back to the local government to mirror local tax payments. Opponents say this will prevent broadband internet from reaching its full outreach potential. A bipartisan Senate bill could see the merging of the state's various environmental rulemaking committees. The idea is creating one large full-time environmental review commission. The idea will be studied first, and lawmakers want those results by the 2012 legislative short session. Supporters envision a new environment commission would resemble the North Carolina Utility Commission. A bill requiring labels on gas pumps offering ethanol in the gasoline sits in the Senate. The labels would let customers know the gas they're buying contains more than or less than 10% ethanol. Representative John Faircloth says ethanol levels are very important to people who fuel small engines.
The greater than 10% is the problem. That's the ones that will do damage to the smaller engines. And I have heard from some mechanics that smaller engines in cars even are susceptible, but I'm not sure of that.
These labels would appear soon after this bill would take effect, but it needs Senate approval first. Other senators are proposing new water efficiency standards for North Carolinians. They'd have every local government create a water efficiency plan that the state would review. The first goal is set for 2016. It would call for North Carolinians to use no more than 100 gallons of water a day. North Carolinians would use 45 gallons of water per day by 2035. Some House members who are also military veterans propose honoring active North Carolina National Guards members. They'd allow Guard members to receive free North Carolina license plates. XPOWs, Purple Heart recipients, and 100% disabled veterans currently qualify for free plates. National Guard license plates would be free of charge beginning July 1st if this bill can become law. Other House members are proposing a bill they're calling Run and You're Done. Those running happen to be people speeding to avoid their arrest. Those police chases will end with felony speeding charges tacked on to whatever else the defendant is facing. It's that felony charge that could trigger the confiscation of a suspect's vehicle.
This bill should help serve as a deterrent, which will help save lives and protect the innocent. It'll help defray the cost of law enforcement prosecution, and it'll prevent the vehicle from being used in a similar crime.
This law would take effect on October 1st. It still sits in a House committee. House legislation would regulate how police agencies organize roadside checkpoints. House Bill 381 would ban law enforcement from establishing checkpoint patterns based on a particular type of vehicle. Police agencies would offer written policies defining their traffic patterns for checkpoints, and that paper would include the written guarantee that certain types of vehicles would not be targeted.
It was my understanding when talking to the folks in research that they understood the current laws already preempted that or prohibited that. But the law evidently is written in such a gray matter that some agencies across the state did not read it that way, and they interpreted the law to say that they could have motorcycle-only checkpoints, and actually a couple of them occurred.
These checkpoint rules would take effect immediately. Any drivers ticketed at checkpoints prior to this law taking effect, you'd still have a ticket. Some Republican lawmakers want to say thanks but no thanks to federal high-speed railroad subsidies. It's free money from D.C., but supporters say what gets built with federal money must be maintained with state money. That's how the debate shaped in committee this week. The House Transportation Committee is discussing a bill that would prevent the state from accepting or seeking hundreds of millions of federal dollars earmarked to build high-speed rail lines. That is, unless the General Assembly votes to seek that money.
It prohibits the spending of $520 million for the sole purpose of decreasing the travel time from Charlotte to Raleigh by 13 minutes. That's what I'm trying to stop. I don't think that's a good use of anyone's money, federal, state, or local.
It's frankly ridiculous. I mean, we have a chance to pick up $461 million in projects that are shovel-ready to upgrade the North Carolina Railroad to improve service for freight and passenger service.
Mecklenburg County Representative Rick Killian says the feds would pay for building the new high-speed rail infrastructure, but the state would be stuck with the long-term maintenance costs, money that he believes would negatively affect highway and road maintenance.
If North Carolina did nothing, we would accept these funds and we would accept this burden forever. And so what we have done here, what House Bill 422 has done, was interjected the General Assembly into the conversation.
Whether or not we upgrade that rail or not, we're still responsible for maintaining it through the North Carolina Railroad is. So do you want to maintain an upgraded system, or do you want to maintain a degraded system?
The House Transportation Committee still holds this bill, House Bill 422, with debate continuing at future committee meetings. This bill is retroactive to March 1st, 2011. Comprehensive House legislation targets people who keep driving after having their driver's licenses revoked. Drivers repeatedly caught driving with a revoked license could face mandatory felony charges. Three-time offenders would receive mandatory jail time, but a judge could order supervised probation with house arrest. Four-time offenders would lose their vehicles.
If we stiffen the penalty for driving while license revoked, we can intercept unsafe drivers before they are caught, perhaps driving drunk again.
These new provisions would take effect this coming October 1st. A Senate Judiciary Committee endorses tougher DWI charges if the drunk driver is caught with a minor in the vehicle. A drunk driver who has a person under 18 years old in the car with them would face what's known as Level 1 DWI charges. Simply put, Level 1 convictions earn a person jail time. In this case, that sentence could run from 30 days to 2 years, with fines reaching $4,000.
Impaired driving puts children at an increased risk for death and
contributes to about 15 to 20% of motor vehicle child deaths in North Carolina.
The new DWI law would take effect December 1st. The Senate is considering banning sex offenders who are or wish to be emergency medical technicians. EMT license candidates already face background checks, where a sex offense conviction most times would eliminate them from any job consideration. But still legally, it's a judgment call. This bill sets the rule in legal stone.
So that there's no debate within the certification circles. We've set the rules. There is a bright line in certifying these EMTs.
The EMT sex offender rule would take effect immediately. EMT students with sex offense convictions could never receive their new licenses. Current EMTs could not renew their credentials. The Senate began its process of considering new congressional and legislative districts this week. The overview process launched Wednesday with an information session with the House and Senate committees charged with redistricting. The Democrats are saying this committee has left off experienced lawmakers. Republicans say, sure, but fewer lawyers will be involved and anyone can offer feedback.
We're going to be out across the state, not only 9 or 10 locations, we're going to be having 2 or 3 satellite locations from there. This opportunity will be more open and transparent than any time before.
Barry Smith with M2Mpolitics.com here to discuss redistricting. Barry, with the Republicans in charge this time around, how different will that Senate map, State House map, and Congressional District map look?
I'll start with the Congressional District map. I suspect that's going to look quite a bit different. I suspect you're going to come out with that seeing Republicans favored a lot more. I've heard possibly you might see an additional minority district in there. Minority districts tend to vote Democratic. They take Democrats out of other districts, so that all benefits the Republicans. House and Senate map, they're somewhat restricted as to what they can do by the Stevenson court decision back about 8 or 10 years ago. They can only do so much. You got the whole county provision that says you just can't traverse county lines the way you used to be able to do it.
When it comes to redistricting, how open is this process, or has it been historically?
Well, they've got to do a lot of stuff in the open. If you go to any committee meeting where they're discussing redistricting, even the House floor, Senate floor, they're going to have a court reporter there. That's unusual. They don't have a court reporter for hardly anything else. I don't remember seeing it in the more than 10 years that I've been in Raleigh. So yeah, that's going to be recorded. The reason for all this is everything's got to be approved by the Justice Department. When they get everything passed, the Justice Department has got to make sure that whatever plan they approve is not violating the Federal Voting Rights Act, primarily making sure that it's not doing anything that would dilute minority voting strength.
Now, the makeup of the committees that will be drawing up the new maps.
Right.
Senator Rucho used a term, basically non-lawyers would be more represented than lawyers on these committees. Did I understand that correctly?
I don't think he said non-lawyers. I think he said normal people.
Normal people.
Senator Rucho said it had been dominated by lawyers 10 years ago. He said this in response to the Senate Minority Leader, Martin Nesbitt, who was critical that Senators Senator Dan Blue and Senator Dan Clodfelter did not get put on the committee. He felt they had a lot of experience and that they should be on the committee. And as the week ended, Senator Charlie Danley from Mecklenburg County actually resigned his seat on the committee and has recommended that the President Pro Tem consult with Senator Nesbitt for his replacement.
All right, politics aside, new maps must be drawn. What's the time frame for when North Carolinians will know what district they're in?
They're saying they want to get them drawn by the 1st of June. Really, I mean, they have to get them drawn in time for the next election, which is going to be in November of 2012. One provision in the North Carolina Constitution for House and Senate seats is you have to have lived in your district for a year before the election in order to be able to run for that. So they really want to make sure they're in place in time so that if somebody decides they want to move into another district and run, they would have time to do that.
Barry Smith, M2Mpolitics.com. Look it up online. Thanks for being on the show, Barry.
Thanks, Kelly.
2 Republican senators propose ending publicly financed campaigns in North Carolina. Public campaign financing gets triggered in some races when a candidate agrees to respect a dollar cap on private campaign contributions. This bill would end that program. It would also change contribution limits to state political parties. No individual could contribute over $250,000 per election, and political parties could not solicit contributions in excess of $250,000. The effort to create an open record sunshine amendment to North Carolina's Constitution was delayed again this week. The bill was sent from the House floor to the House Rules Committee. That proposed sunshine amendment would open the vast majority of public records to review, beginning with documents created in 2013. It is unclear when this bill could reach the House floor again. The House also delayed consideration of a proposed constitutional amendment to term limit House Speaker and Senate President pro tem tenures. This bill's been rescheduled numerous times. It's back on the schedule for an April 4th full House debate. There's some opposition to this proposed constitutional amendment. Some lawmakers think a traditional law could enforce term limits just as effectively. When you surf the internet this weekend, drop by and say hi to us here at Legislative Week in Review. You can find us on Facebook. I look at it every day, facebook.com/Legweek. We have a great website, UNC-TV.org/Legweek. Features an easy-to-use video player where you can click and watch this show and our interviews. I read every email we receive, so if something's on your mind, write to us here. The team's email, legweek@unctv.org. That's our show for this week. We certainly hope to see you next time.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.